You're listening to the Motivated Mindset Podcast with Bobby Stein.
Hello, my name is Bobby Stein, your host of the Motivated Mindset Podcast, where I share candid conversations with extraordinary folks from all walks of life to discover just what motivates their mindset. Welcome in and thanks for listening. Hey there, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Motivated Mindset Podcast. And I trust that wherever you are watching today or listening, that you're doing absolutely amazing, because today I think you're going to be amazed. I'm joined by an extraordinary fellow. He's a lifelong enthusiast. Did I say that right? Enthusiast of the sport of bodybuilding. He's an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a gym owner. The Fitness Edge over in West Palm Beach, Florida. He's an NPC judge. He's an author again. He's a mentor to many. His book, My Journey with the Iron, is actually in the Library of Congress, in Washington, D.C., of all places, if you can believe that. And we're going to learn about all about that and what else motivates the mindset of my friend, Bill Neylon. Bill, how are you today, man?
Great, Bobby. It's a real thrill to be on your show, have to say.
That's awesome. It's like I was explaining to you before the show started. It's been a little bit since I've done one of these, so hopefully I can work out the bugs. We can get through the conversation and provide some meaningful insights to the listener. Bill, I met you, I think it was probably, I want to say like 20 years ago at a bodybuilding competition. And I also want to say that it was in Orlando. And I never forgot how engaging you were with everybody. Actually, you were one of the friendlier folks amongst all the different people that were out and about milling around and everything. And then fast forward to a few weeks back at a competition over in Boca Raton, Florida, I picked you out and I said, is your name Bill? And we started the conversation, which ultimately led to this podcast. When did you get into the sport of bodybuilding? Because we're going to find out about how you got into the judging. At what age and how did that come about?
Well, I was always small for my size. Like my old football coach used to say, you keep your eye on old Bill over there. He may not be big, but he's slow. They always threw it to a bad spot, Bobby, my hands. But I didn't make it for football. I was cut from the team. And, I believe there's two types of motivation, positive motivation and negative motivation. Positive motivation is great. People are saying to you now as you're preparing, Bobby, you look great, man. You're in great shape. And that keeps us going. That motivates us. But something negative is what spurs action. And I give an example of my own personal case, the football thing. I mean, I stuck it out. I went to all the two-a-day practices in the morning and afternoon. I'm not a quitter. I will not quit. I was myself and one other guy. We were the last two cut from the high school football team. And the coach said, Neely, didn't even know my name. You're too small and you're too slow. Come back next year. We'll see what we can do. But he didn't believe in lifting weights. But kids can be mean. I got 23, Jimmy. What number did you get, Steve? I got number 47. What number did you get, Neylon? Oh, that's right. You didn't get a uniform. You got cut. That stung. That hurt. And I had this thing, well, I'll show them. Right. Yeah. And I just rudimentary knowledge of weight training. I had my uncle's old set in my bedroom. I had this old antiquated York chart that I followed. And I don't know that it did me any good, but I persisted. And for my 17th birthday, my sister got me a subscription to Muscular Development magazine, the old York. They had Strength and Health, and they had Muscular Development back then. And, of course, Weider had his Muscle Builder, which eventually turned into Muscle and Fitness. But I started training in high school, but I never trained my lower body, never trained legs. And I was always climbing ropes and climbing the pegboard in the gym, and I wanted to build my body. And I'll show them. I wanted to be strong. I was a very good hockey player because I learned how to play in Massachusetts. When I came down to New Jersey, they thought I was a superstar. I really wasn't, but I was average in Massachusetts. But where I was in New Jersey in high school, they just didn't play. They weren't very good. But I just had this burning desire, and I started to see some development. And that really inspired me. I said, I'm going to keep going with this. And I talk about it in the book. I joined a health club that my mother joined first. And funny story about my coach, the venerable Carol Whitfield. My mom was a 60s housewife. You know, she comes home one day in 1974, spring of 74. We're living in Atlanta, and she goes, "Oh, Bill, I joined a health club." You know, my mom was one of these, enjoy that pot roast. It was $2.49 a pound, you know. And I'm thinking, Mom, what? Oh, yes, you really like this gentleman. He's an older gentleman, but, you know, he's trained the strongest man in the world, and I think you'd like him. I said, hold on, Mom. Now, Bobby, I've been reading a little bit, muscular development, plus anything I could get my hands on, these old York publications on getting stronger, and anything I could find on strength and developing strength and muscle, I just voraciously
devoured it. Yeah.
So I'm 20, and at 20, I know a little, so I'm dangerous, right? So I'm just incensed about this fraud who bilked my poor mother out of a year's membership. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to debunk this fraud and get my mother's money back. So I'm full of righteous indignation. So I drive down to this health club, which is attached to a Radisson hotel. I see the sign health club. I go inside the door, and there's this arthritic old man sitting behind the desk with a health club shirt on. So I said, "Excuse me, are you Cairo?" And I'm thinking, Cairo's a syrup. You know what? He looks up and he goes, "Can I do for you, boy?" That's how Cairo talked. And he was 66, but he was ancient. Yeah. And I said, "Yeah." I said, "My mother was in here the other day. My mother was in here today. And yes, Joanne Neylon, nice woman, bought a membership." I said, "Yeah." And then I look around the walls, Bobby. 8 by 10 black and whites. Anybody who's anybody. I mean, names many of you may not know, but Tommy Kono, a young Arnold Schwarzenegger when he came over, pro wrestlers, Olympic lifters, anybody who's anybody in weightlifting and bodybuilding in the 50s and 60s with Cairo. I see him judge in the 56 and 52 Olympics. He was a Olympic judge, weightlifting. And I look around at these black and white photos, and I look back down at him, and I said, "And can I join too?" So he looks at me and goes, "What are those strings hanging out of your shorts, boy?" "Oh, yeah. Those are your legs. Do you squat? You need to squat, boy." And I said, "No." And I skipped my morning classes the next day, and I met with him, and he started me training. I'm a real encourager. I believe that's the way I do it, but Carol was not. He expected it done. You're there. What are you here for if not to work hard? And he just expected it done. Initially, he just had me doing the fundamentals, bent over rows, a great exercise that I still preach today, dumbbell or barbell pullover presses, great compound movement. And these basic movements, dips, chins, squats, sets of 15 on the squat. Oof. And after a while, I said, "Carol, I don't want to be a weightlifter. I want to be a bodybuilder." "Don't worry about that, son. You're trying to put the skylight on. You haven't built the foundation." But I just said, you know, he's the man. I'm just going to stick to the plan. And then I remember after about 5.5 months, he was after a particularly hard workout. He was walking away from me, and he didn't look at me, but he turned toward me, and I heard him say under his breath, "Not bad." And I knew I arrived. I had made it. You know, "Not bad," he said. Yeah. And about a year and a half later, he encouraged me to go into a bodybuilding contest. Now, back then, Bobby, I'm giving you all a little history lesson. They were few and far between. It was the old AAU. The NPC didn't come into existence until 1982. So all we had was AAU physique contests, what they call them, and they were always after the powerlifting. And they were generally in high school gymnasiums, basketball courts, after they swept up the floor from all the chalk from the deadlifters and squatters. They'd hang a light off the basketball net about 11 o'clock at night after all the powerlifting was over. And maybe my first contest was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 1974. We drove from Atlanta to Winston-Salem 7 hours, waited all day in the bleachers for the powerlifting den. Then the bodybuilding started. 23 guys lined up on the stage. There's no music. There's no weight classes. There's no drug-free. There's no masters. 23 guys come on the stage, and I'm 148 pounds. And I'm looking at who the judges are. Some of the powerlifters, the YMCA director, some of the powerlifters' wives. I'm thinking these are the bodybuilding judges, and the guy with the big chest and big arms would win. Front double biceps, rear double biceps, abs and thighs, most muscular. They picked 10 guys. See you next year. And that was a long ride home. And I didn't win anything my first 10 or 12 shows. And so I quit. Back then, if you had big arms and a big chest, you'd win. A smaller guy like me had a pretty good little physique then. It wasn't as refined as it became, but a symmetrical, good physique. But they weren't interested in under 150 pounds. The guy 190's winning. The guy 210's winning. So I quit and always trained. I always continued training, but I discontinued competing. And I moved down here I worked for the YMCA for a while. I introduced 89 people to weight training back in 83 through 85. And the big craze then was cardio, aerobics. Yeah. But I introduced 89 people to weight training at the YMCA. They loved me. I moved down here in 86, and I started working as a trainer at a one-on-one gym. And so my clients said, well, you used to compete, I said, 100 years ago, 74 to 77, 76. Well, you ought to get back into it. And I said, nah, I don't think so. And then I got with a very good bodybuilder at the time, and I paid him. And he was a trainer and a coach. And I just said, listen, no harm done. You don't think I have what it takes? Fine. Nothing personal, but I don't want to waste my time. A lot of people are suggesting me competing, but you're a guy who competes. You've done well. Tell me if you think I got what it takes. So he told me to take my shirt off. I hit a few poses. He looked at me and said, wow, you've done this before, haven't you? I said, a long time ago. He says, no, I think you do very well. He said, I really do. He put me on a diet, Bobby, that I wouldn't use today. I wouldn't do it now, but it gave me structure. It gave me regimen. And I stuck with the diet he gave me, and I went down and I did the Miami Metro Classic. I won the Masters and took third in the Open. And the guy that won my class won the show. But it was a reaction I got from people. I was 35 then. The reaction I got from people, the audience and competitors, really encouraged me. And I said to myself, I think I can do this. And then I just started competing.
So you had that positive motivation. On one hand, Cairo wasn't he was, and the football coach, they were like negative motivators, right?
Right.
Just get it done, says Cairo in the at the
but
hotel.
But I believe, at least for me at 20 years old, the negative spurred me on. Such as, why don't you get on the road, you fat butt? Yeah. That guy called me fat. He doesn't know me. I must be, and it's something that, it's a loss of a job or divorce or something. I mean, revolutions were built on empty stomachs. Yeah. We don't make change when we're comfortable.
There was a quote by Jim Rohn. I don't know if you're familiar with Jim Rohn. He's a motivational speaker, and he actually mentored, and that's where Tony Robbins got his selling his merchandise at the back of his seminars. And Jim Rohn has
Jim Rohn. Yes, I know that name. Yeah.
One of his quotes says, "Don't linger at the table of success for too long. You've got to get hungry." And what your comment was there about the revolutions were won on empty stomachs. Yeah. So that's intriguing. So now you go down and you're encouraged by the fact that folks are actually saying, hey, you did well. I mean, the guy that won the overall, beat you. He was in your class. This individual, the bodybuilder coach who put you on a regimented diet, he sees something and you've done it before. So that spurs you on now at age 35. What took you mentioned to me when we were talking not long ago, you had pictures on your wall, I think you said, of your heroes. And
in high school. Yeah.
I remember doing similar things and reading the magazines and just, there wasn't the internet back then. So it was kind of like buying a record album. You'd get your favorite rock and roll band or whatever, and you would study that album cover, and your imagination would run wild. You would just read the lyrics and you'd study the photographs and the images, and that's the same. Who were some of your early icons that you wanted to emulate?
Chris Dickerson, because he was my height. Chris was my height.
How tall are you, Bill?
5'6".
Okay.
And Chris was never 5'6". I love him, dear friend, but he's never 5'6". He ain't 5'6". I'm 5'6". Chris isn't 5'6". Yeah. But Chris, Boyer Coe, the great Frank Zane. When I saw Zane, I stopped turning pages. I said, "My God, look at this man's physique. Look at his body." Yeah. The great Boyer Coe, Bill Pearl, of course. But back then, Bobby, and you and I talked about this when we had that day at your contest. You never dreamed of meeting these guys.
That's right.
They were in California.
Yeah.
All we had were images in the magazines. I never heard their
Exactly.
voices, never saw them move. We'd wait for the next issue. And we'd
30
be in the
days.
gym,
Yeah.
we'd gather around and, well, who won the Mr. America this year? And we'd have to wait for the issue to come out.
Yeah.
Months later, and then you'd see who the placings were, who won the Olympia. Nobody knew unless you knew someone who had been there.
Right.
You had to wait months to get the results. But these gods in the magazines, these images, so I put pictures of them on my wall. My 1969, 1970, 71, my parents would come in my room like, what's wrong with our son? Why not race car drivers or baseball? But why these men with oil on their shaved bodies? What's wrong with our son? But that's what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And when I started working out, and it wasn't cool to be training in 1970 in the
Wasn't
general
vogue.
masses.
It wasn't
No,
vogue.
always trying to be Mr. America. Maybe. What's it to you? Maybe I do. Those guys they're all gay and they can't move. They're not strong. All these unflattering myths surrounded the public because it was something that was unfamiliar to them. So naturally, they're afraid of it.
Right.
They're afraid of something they don't know. They're
They're not
intimidated.
familiar with it. Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's and I thought, I looked at Chris, I said, maybe if I train my butt off for 10 years, I can get close to that, somehow. But they were my inspiration.
Yeah.
But again, until many, many years later, I never heard them speak or saw them move, just pictures in the magazines.
Well,
and again, you never thought you'd meet them.
Well, that's just it. See, that's the unique. I find that really intriguing. The fact that you had these icons, these heroes, the people that you emulated. You never could have imagined that you would have met them, heard them speak, watched them, but moreover, interact with them and become friends with these people. I think that's the really. I think that's the most interesting part about it. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, right? I mean, it's just I think that's just miraculous, So what that tells me is that if you're a youngster or of somebody of any age or demographic, if you've got a dream or a desire burning in your heart, don't let it go, because you never know how things are going to unfold. You just never know. You could not have forecasted the serendipitous events that led to you meeting like somebody like Bill Pearl or Boyer Coe.
Right. Never
in a million years. So tell us about that. How did you meet some of these guys? What happened?
Well, this is a hotbed for bodybuilding, Florida. It really is. And I've met almost all the current pros for the last many years. And not the newest crop of guys like 2004, 24, 25, 23. I don't know a lot of that young crop, but everybody prior to that I've met or known, because I've been an official in the sport for 27 years, 28 years. So when they would guest pose or, I met Jay Cutler many times, really great guy. So I've come in contact with the newer guys, but the Nationals, they used to hold at the Jackie Gleason Theater down in Miami. And in 2003, Mike Brooks and I got tickets to go watch the Nationals. And I erroneously thought I had bought tickets for the prejudging and the night show, but they were actually only for the prejudging. So when we discovered that, I told Mike, well, listen, I'll go get him for the evening show. And there was a mass of people at the night show. So I'm walking actually sideways through a mass of people trying to get to the ticket booth to get the tickets. I get them. I'm walking back sideways through all these people. And who do I come chest to chest with? Chris Dickerson. Chris lives in California. It lived in California and New York. And he's right there. He's right in front of my face. My idol since I'm 16, 17 years old. And there he is.
That's what I'm talking about.
So he's right here. And I looked at him and I said, well, you're Chris Dickerson. And he agreed. And then I proceeded to tell him more about himself than he knew. Yeah. And I said, I know something about you very few people know. I said, when you were 16, your vocal coach told you should start lifting weights to expand your rib cage and your lung capacity for your singing. He backed up and furrowed his eyebrows and said, how do you know that? I said, because, Chris, I read it in an Ebony magazine in 1970 when I was 16.
Ebony magazine.
And he said, that was 30 years ago. I said, I bought the magazine because you were in it. That's the kind of impact you had on me. And he looked at me and he said, wow. I said, listen, Chris, if you're ever back here in Florida, please, I gave him my card. I said, I'd love for you to come see my facility. I'd love to take you to lunch. It would be my honor. So he smiled and thanked me, and we went our separate ways. 4 years later, I'm judging the Southern States, 2007, and we're going to take a break for intermission. And I turn around from the judges' table, and who's sitting right behind me in the VIP seats but Chris Dickerson. So I spin around, and I extend my hand and said, Chris, you probably don't remember me, but, and he went, Ebony Magazine, right? And I said, yes. And the next weekend, we went out for lunch. And I think he just loved my enthusiasm, all I knew. A lot of people around the state know, they call me the historian, because I really, ever since I was 16, I've stored everything. And I'll tell you who won the 83 Olympia. I'll tell you who won the 75 Mr. America, Dale Adrian, by the way, or anything historical. I just have that kind of memory for that. So if they ever want a fact verified about a bodybuilding championship, I can usually help out. But I think Chris loved my enthusiasm, me reliving his career and so forth. And he and Boyer Coe were great friends, and I loved Boyer. And I took the liberty of asking Chris for Boyer's number. And I just gambled a phone call, and he wasn't home. I left a message. 20 minutes later, I get a phone call on like a Saturday afternoon from Boyer Coe out in California. Is this Bill Neylon? Well, yes. Well, this is Boyer Coe. Yeah, oh my God! I mentioned on the message that I was good friends with Chris, and that my mentor, my coach, my trainer was Cairo Whitfield. And Cairo had judged Boyer and Chris in their early years, Junior Mr. America. They used to have these junior shows, Junior Mr. USA, Junior Mr. America, and the old AAU. So Cairo was a staple here in Atlanta. He had come from that old York crowd up in Pennsylvania, but he was a Southern guy, and he had a big gym on Forsyth Street in Atlanta. And Cairo trained 4 Mr. Americas. Harry Johnson, 1959 Mr. America, being one of them. Harry Smith, who had a big gym in Tampa for many, many years, Smith's Health Club. And it was a staple in Tampa. I think he purchased it in 1956. Back then, they had a male and female. He had a female area of the gym for women. And there were men's days and women's days. I mean, that's how it used to be way back, But Harry was another vestige from the past. Great guy, And I love their simple wisdom. A lot of people say, well, Bill, you're kind of old school. Yeah, old school works, always has. Nothing's really changed. Absolutely. Bill Pearl, one time, people asked, well, what do you think of the new equipment and all this new technology with training, all this stuff? And Bill said, things haven't changed that much. You're either pushing something or you're pulling something. And the simplicity of that wisdom, and Boyer said to me once that, because he would go to contests even if he wasn't in shape, if Bill Pearl was going to be there, just to glean information from the man. And Boyer related to me one time. He asked Bill after a seminar. He said, "Well, Bill, can you tell me your secret?" And Bill leaned into him real close and leaned into Boyer's ear, and he said, "Effort."
So funny. It's so true. It's so fundamental when you really boil it down. But millions and billions are being made on supplements and coaching and all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, it's push pull and how do I lose weight? Well, move more and eat less, essentially, right? But I am speaking with Bill Neylon, author and entrepreneur, and you can find Bill on his podcast. Bill, what's the name of your podcast?
Dose of Uncommon.
The Dose of Uncommon. And that's with Sharika Shim.
Yeah.
Yep, you have to tune into that. You also find Bill over on the Instagram platform at Bill Neylon1. So give him a follow. You'd be glad you did. You can glean some insight and wisdom. You mentioned being an NPC or you're a judge. How did that all come about? I mean, I know that, the circuitous route that you took to meet Chris Dickerson and subsequently Boyer Coe. And I know you've met many of the greats, as you alluded to, Jay Cutler more recently and things of that nature. What got you involved with judging? Because that's where I know you from.
Sure. From 1989, I started competing regularly every year. I competed for 13 straight years. Took a year off, 2003, came back and competed 3 times, won all 3. And then I had a cervical discectomy, and that put me out from competing for 4 years. But around 1995, whenever I would officiate a show, yes, I'm an official, I'm a judge, but I would go in there early. I would help out. I would help the promoter. I would help whatever needed to be done. I'm there. I'm there for the good of the show, so I'm going to help out. If you need me to sweep up, if you need me to hand out flyers, and people look at me, and I'm dressed in the whole judges thing. Doesn't matter. Everybody needs to pitch in and help, and I know there's some judges that are above that. They won't, they're being paid to judge. That's all they're going to do. That and eat the snacks at the table. But I'll try to help out wherever I need it. And I think Peter Potter picked up on that. And Peter is my great dear friend, and of course, the promoter of the Southern States. And he was vice president of the NPC for many, many, many years. And Peter is huge in the development of bodybuilding here in Florida. From the 80s on, he established and gave these guys publicity and a step up. He had a gym himself. Oh, gosh. It'll come to me in a second, the name of it. Gosh, I should know it. But Peter Potter would run shows, and he was the head judge at most of the shows, and he was bodybuilding here in Florida. He was the man.
No question.
Peter saw my willingness, my spirit to help.
Your enthusiasm.
And I said, Peter, I'd like to get into judging. And the criteria back then, Hollywood Health Spa, that was Peter's
shout out to
gym that he had down in Hollywood. I said, I'd like to judge. He said, well, you have to test judge for five competitions. And if your scores are cohesive with the rest of the panel, we'll vote you in. And that's how it works. But you'll have to test judge 5 times. And I flying colors because I have such an enthusiasm for it. And then I would mentor the other judges, tell them what we're looking for. And, to me, it's preparation first, individuality, and attitude. You need those 3. And I talk about that in the book. You need those 3. Preparation, attitude, and just that confidence on stage. Show me who you are.
And that book, by the way, My Journey with the Iron, authored by Bill Neylon, chock full of insight. It's a slight book. It's not a big, long read, but it's got tons of insights and information. It's edited by his podcast co-host, Sharika Shim. Pick it up on Amazon. I happen to have a signed copy here from the man himself, Bill. But yeah, getting into the judging, some of the criteria I was going to ask you, and you just mentioned the top 3. How important is it, number 1, with the individuality, okay? But number 2, with the attitude, how folks are treating one another, other competitors. Give us an example, for instance, where you may have run into somebody that had for lack of a better word, a hard-on for you because you were in his class and he wouldn't even talk to you or discuss anything. How important is being attitude? How is attitude impacting a judge's influence on your total outcome? Is the athlete kind? Is he considerate? Does that play a role or a factor?
Great question, Bobby. Well, I have to place principles before personalities. I might not like a guy. He might be a jerk, but if he's the best guy in the class, I have to give it to him. Sure. He's the best. He's got the best physique. However, and I talk about that a little bit in the book. Chapter 4 is competition if it's for you, if you choose it. Turning a passion into a profession is a previous chapter. But if you're going to compete, do it for the right reasons. Do it for self-improvement. Don't do it to compete against someone else. You're really just competing against yourself. It's you against yourself. I never worried about other competitors, although I had developed a reputation in the 90s for coming in very good shape, very prepared. And I developed somewhat of a reputation in the state. And I'd show up and there'd be competitors who wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't weigh in front of me. I was always friendly with everyone and happy and wished everyone well. That relaxed me backstage and helped me.
I agree, by the way. I totally
everybody's
agree.
there for the same reason. I've had people say, why'd you help that guy oil up? He's in your class. Because he needed help. He needed someone to show him how. But I'm not worried about him. It's not me against him anyway. It's me against me.
That's a great
and that guy's going to remember that down the road. I'm not going to be on stage forever. And I'm happy and gratified with the fact that I haven't been on stage in many, many years, but I'm remembered for how I was on stage and off stage. My character is what's important to me.
Your legacy.
You're going to lose your physique someday. You're not going to have the pop and pizzazz you had when you were in your prime of your life. But if you like what I learned from Boyer Coe and these people, kindness and being friendly and kind. I've heard people say, well, maybe he's having a bad day. That doesn't matter to me. What happened to me that day is not affecting someone who wants to come up and meet me. That shouldn't have any bearing what happened in my day to this person. They're fresh. They're unblamed. You have to treat them. That's my opinion. But there were guys that wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't weigh in front of me. And I'd look over like, well, if you want to pout, you want to sit in the corner that way, that's on you. Okay. Good luck. My guns are loaded. I'm ready. Nothing you do today is going to have any effect on me because I'm prepared today. But if you want to act that way and be antisocial, fine, that's on you. But good luck out there. I'll see you out there. And that helped me. And I think that and when I have seminars, when I talk to competitors, I say, listen, it doesn't start when you step out on stage. It starts the night before. All the officials are there. All the judges are there. We see you. What kind of a competitor are you? Are you kind? Are you friendly? Are you supportive? Or are you all about yourself? Are you arrogant? Are you think you're all that? Well, when it comes down to the show, if it's very close between you and another individual, very, very close, and that individual's kind, has a good attitude, and doesn't show that arrogance, if it's very close, I might just go with that individual because they're going to represent my sport the way I want it represented to the public. So again, if it's very close, also, I don't remember who was third, who was fifth, who was second. I remember people that impressed me.
Yeah.
And judges and audiences have long memories. If you show your butt on stage and you've got a bad attitude, and don't mess it up for the guy that won. The judges chose him or her. Yeah. Shake their hand.
Right.
Shake their hand. It was their night. Just because you didn't go your way, don't throw your hands down or act this kind of way and ruin that man's moment because he worked hard too. Yeah. Be a champion, win or lose. I was always a grateful winner and a gracious loser. And judges saw that, audiences saw that. Your time will come if you hang in there. But if it's his night, hey, man, great job.
I completely agree with you.
And sometimes I wouldn't win, Bobby, and I'd come off the stage and I'd have people coming up to me saying, hey, man, can you tell us about your diet and how you train? And I'd say, well, I didn't win. He won. No, we don't want to talk to him. We want to talk to you. And that always humbled me. It was my physique they wanted to emulate, not the winners that night. Yeah. So, and, I'm a Christian man, and, I believe God's always watching and how I handle myself. There was a show I did in Auburndale one time, and I was very fortunate. I won that night. And I learned something too, Bobby. Everybody loves a winner. Everybody, all these strangers are patting me on the back, shaking my hand and everything. But I'm the same guy if I was third place. Same physique, same person, same personality. But because I won, I'm very, so it made me keep that in mind. I'm the same guy, win or lose. I'm the same individual. But I'm coming out of the auditorium, and this big black fella, he's right by the door, and he kind of grabbed me harder than I think he meant to, but he kind of spun me around, and I was a little startled. Because when I won the show, I looked up, I said, I just mouthed, thank you, Lord. Because, I was just grateful that things went my way that night, and I was chosen. I just kind of pantomimed, thank you, Lord. But as I was exiting the auditorium, he said, I don't know how many else saw what you did tonight, son, but I saw it. And it's funny, that was 30 years ago, but I remember that impacted him. And,
it's funny, Bill, is everybody, everybody's taking a look. Everybody's watching. Say, God judges the heart. Man looks on the outside, and that's just it. Men do look on the outside, men and women. And it's how you present yourself. I mean, listen, I've let my guard down and fell off my high horse countless times. It's how we recover from that and how we respond that makes all the difference. What type of legacy do I want to leave? What kind of character, what kind of taste do I want to leave in somebody's mouth? And for somebody, for you making that pantomime gesture and then moving ahead 30 years, it's still, it was impactful. And as rewinding to where you said, is the individual going to be, what all things being equal, what's the tipping point? Is the guy going to be a good ambassador to the sport? Recall the story, if you don't mind, Bill, about the youngster that went up for an autograph behind stage with Bill Pearl, and give us the backstory. Bill Pearl. It was a young,
Oh yeah, and that's
because
in Bill's book. Oh
that I
my
think
gosh.
shines the spotlight on what we're chatting about.
Yes, yes. Well, I got to go back just a bit. Bill had retired in 1967 at 35. He had won the Mr. Universe 3 times. He was a legend at 35. There was no more mountains to climb or conquer. And he retired from competing, and he was training people. Dennis Cinerino, of course, Chris Dickerson. He was Chris's mentor, Chris's father figure. And he had lost a lot of muscular body weight and got into long distance cycling because he had retired from competitive bodybuilding and was concerned about his health. And
Sure.
anyway, he was mentoring and training champions at his gym in Medford, Oregon. And Weider was trying to stir up controversy and stir up business. He was a businessman.
He's an entrepreneur.
And he was trying to drum up attention for Arnold. And Arnold was a sensation from Europe. And Arnold had already won the Mr. Universe 3 times. Bill had won it 3 times. Well, Weider starts with these articles, supposedly penned by Arnold. Well, Arnold wasn't writing them because Arnold was barely speaking English in 1970. So he certainly wasn't writing and editing articles for Muscle and Fitness. Weider was. But it was, Weider had this title called Paper Tigers, and it's a play on words with a book that George Plimpton wrote called Paper Lions, which was an expose of the NFL. So he called the Paper Tigers, and he's taunting, where's the great Dave Draper? Where's Bill Pearl? Where's Larry Scott? Where are all these supposed champions? Well, it's not fair, Bobby, because these guys had their day in the sun. They were all in their 40s now. Arnold was 23 years old and at the height of his powers. So it really isn't a fair comparison. They were past their prime. But every month he's writing these articles. They're Paper Tigers. They're resting on their laurels. Where are they now? My boy Arnold will face I will face anybody. Arnold was supposedly saying, I will face anybody on the planet. Sergio Oliva, bring him on, so forth. Well, Bill, he's secure in who he is. He knows who he is and what he's done. And he really didn't read the magazines anyway. But his coach, Leo Stern, down in San Diego, Stern's gym, Leo was Bill's mentor and coach for many, many years. Took all the iconic black and white photos of Bill that you see. Leo's reading these articles, and he is incensed. He flies up to Medford, and he goes up to Bill, and he says, you see this crap he's writing about you? He's calling you a coward. And Bill said, nah, but he says, look, and he's opening up specific citations where he pretty much, and he's kind of unfairly centering them on Bill.
Yeah.
And everybody has their bottom line, and Bill had his. And the articles were getting offensive, pretty much calling Bill a coward. And Bill, with some deliberation, made an announcement to the world 1 year in advance. I will be at the Victoria, not Playhouse, but the Victoria Auditorium, September 21st, 1971, to take on all comers at the NABBA Universe. I will be there. And the Olympia really hadn't reached its status yet. Back then, 1970, 71, the biggest title in the world then was still the NABBA Universe.
Yes.
And the tradition was if you won the Mr. America, you went on to the Mr. Universe in London. But also Bill knew he would be judged fairly there. And he really never competed. He never competed in the IFBB. He never competed in Weider's organization. Bill had told me, I respected Joe Weider, but I would not have any business dealings with him. I didn't trust him. I respected him, but I didn't trust him. But he knew at the NABBA Universe he would get a fair shake with the British and other world judges. So he made the announcement 1 year in advance, I will be there. I will take on anybody. Now, side note, Arthur Jones, the creator of Nautilus Equipment, he had worked with Casey Viator and Sergio Oliva. Now, Oliva and Casey both built their physiques with barbells and dumbbells. But he took them on and introduced them to this new wave, this Nautilus Equipment.
I remember
and
that.
Arthur Jones promised, he gave Sergio Oliva $5,000. And he said, and if you beat Bill Pearl and Arnold, if Arnold shows up, I'll give you another $5,000 because I want to show that Nautilus Equipment and Nautilus style training is superior to barbells and dumbbells. So, of course, Oliva takes it on. So now Bill is way down in muscular body weight. He's also 40 years old at the time. And 40 years old, Bobby, in 1970 was a much older 40 than it is today.
It was like a 50
That was
or
like being like 58 or 60.
Exactly.
in 1970. He was 40. And but Bill starts training. Bill trains at 4 a.m. 4 o'clock in the morning. Chris told me he hated that. But he starts with or without you. Bill trains at 4 a.m. And he started vigorously training for the Mr. Universe. And he took an unflattering picture of himself, put it on a shaving mirror, and a very good recent picture of Arnold, put it on a shaving mirror. So he had to look at it every day when he woke up. And that was his motivation.
Yeah.
But Bill trained his tail off for 1 year, came in the shape of his life, on stage at 237 pounds, at 5'10", 41 years old, in the shape of his life, vegetarian like yourself, and trained all year for the thing. All the greats are there. Sergio Oliva is there. Frank Zane is there. Reg Park is there. All the greats are there. Conspicuously absent, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Bill did an exhibition 2 weeks prior in Los Angeles because he wanted to get the dust off and get on stage. And he hadn't been on stage in 4 years. So he gave an exhibition to clear the cobwebs and see where he was at 2 weeks before. Weeder and Arnold are there. Bill looks so unbelievable that Weeder's a little nervous. What if he beats his boy? Now, Arnold's gung-ho. Arnold wants a chance at Bill Pearl.
He's chomping at the bit, yeah.
But Weeder does not. And
He
Weeder's
knows better.
nervous. And so he makes him pull out. And he says, well, you remember the IFBB. If you do, you'll be banned. And he banned Sergio from competing in the Olympia that year because he competed in this. But Frank Zane had always competed in that NABA. He didn't ban Frank Zane.
It's weird.
But he banned Sergio from competing that year's Mr. Olympia, which was held the next year. I mean, the next week, by the way, which is also interesting. The 1971 Mr. Olympia, held 1 week after the NABA Mr. Universe, had one competitor, Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's why nobody ever talks about the 1971 Mr. Olympia. Arnold was the only competitor.
Yeah.
Arnold was the only competitor there. But anyway, getting back to the NABA Universe, Bill is there for the contest of his life. His reputation is on the line, his integrity, everything is there. He made the statement a year ahead. Now he's got to pony up. Yeah. So he's backstage. Oliva's pumping up furiously, Sergio. And there's Reg Park looking very good. And, of course, the inimitable Frank Zane looking with all his symmetrical glory. They're all pumping up backstage. And this man comes backstage with a young boy. When I heard the story, the boy was on braces, leg braces. Not true. Got embellished over the years. Not true. Yeah. I learned that from Bill. But that's the way I heard the story. But a man comes backstage with this boy. And the man says, well, son, there's Sergio Oliva, the great Sergio Oliva. Why don't you go get his autograph? The boy, pen and paper, goes over to Sergio. Sergio lambastes him, yells at him. Yeah. Get away from me. Can't you see I'm pumping up? Can't you see I'm preparing? You shouldn't even be back here. Get out of here. Don't come back here. Well, Bill sees this. And the boy is almost in tears. He goes back to his father. And the father says to the boy, well, there's the great Bill Pearl. Maybe he'll give you his autograph. So this kid going over to Bill Pearl, but he's gun shy after the scolding he just got.
Sure.
And he comes over. Bill puts him on his shoulders, takes pictures, signs an autograph for him, talks to the boy. He should be getting ready. He should be telling the boy, listen, as soon as this is over, I'll spend all the time in the world with you. But right now, I've got to mentally prepare. He didn't even oil up. Didn't even put oil on. But it didn't matter to Bill. It didn't matter. That whole year of training didn't matter. What mattered was how that boy was treated.
Yeah.
That's what was important to Bill Pearl. And he's spending this valuable time. He should be concentrating on himself and mentally and physically preparing himself to step on stage for the contest of his life. It didn't matter. What mattered was that boy. Expeditor comes backstage. Let's go, man. Line up. Bill says, well, son, wish me luck. I've got to go. Takes a little oil. Goes out there. Didn't even pump up, didn't even grab a dumbbell. Walks out on stage with the greatest in the world for the contest of his life. His reputation rests on what the outcome of this. And he looks out in the audience. And there's the boy in the second row waving at him. Right behind his father in the front row with the rest of the judges. As Bill tells it, I know one vote Sergio wasn't getting that year.
Exactly.
He was very humble. Bill won unanimously. But he said, I know one vote Sergio Oliva wasn't getting that day. And just to demonstrate you never know who you're speaking with. So treat everyone with respect.
That's the moral of the story right there.
Treat everyone with respect.
That's a great story. Again, everybody's taking a look, whether you're having an on day or an off day. People are going to, you're going to leave a good taste or a bad taste in that individual's mouth based upon how you treated them. That's a wonderful
and I took notes from that,
Yeah,
how
I did too, and you shared it with me.
And there's nothing more gratifying to me when a competitor comes back and says, Bill, I did what you said. I did the Junior USA. I took third. Then it went on. I took second at the USAs. Thanks so much that's worth way more than money. Yeah. When a competitor comes back and thanks you for advice that he heeded. Yeah, and that's very gratifying.
I agree. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Are you an ambassador for the sport? Or are you an ambassador to the human race?
Well, it's the mark you can leave if you choose to. It's the mark you can leave if you choose to.
Yeah, there's a lyric in a song by a band that I listen to, and it says, I wish to leave the air behind me clear.
Ah, that's a good one.
But I love all the old school stuff. I got my old school bodybuilding shirt on.
I love it.
I see you have the Fitness Edge. Fitness Edge, that's your club. And you've been at it now for how long over there in West Palm?
35 years. By the grace of God, I'm really blessed. Show me another personal training facility, 35 years, same owner, same location. Yeah, I'm really, really blessed. Really
you should be proud of that accomplishment, and that's also to be gratifying. You mentioned Reg Park and Frank Zane, of course, with his physique. What did you think about? Because I have my idols too, Frank being one of them. Zane, I like Steve Reeves.
Wow! Oh boy, as Bill Pearl said about Steve Reeves, when God made Steve Reeves, he broke the mold. Reeves was such a handsome guy, beautiful physique,
had everything going,
and that was a life well lived. Same with Bill Pearl. I'm sure.
Right? What do you know
when
about
Bill
Steve?
Pearl was done, God said, "Well done." Yeah, Reeves was very smart. He made investments. At one time, he was the most photographed man in the world when he was making his Hercules films. He was strikingly handsome. But he invested, he got Morgan horses, he invested in property and land. He made a lot of movies. They weren't great movies, but he was such a handsome guy. He made a very lucrative salary making these films. And he retired from filmmaking and lived a quiet life in California. But his first love was horses, and he raised Morgan horses. I think he sold them and lived on a ranch.
That's interesting.
But these guys, what I admire about them, and what I mentioned in the book too, what I learned from the great Bill Pearl, Boyer Coe, Chris Dickerson, Dave Draper, humility. They had great humility and a quiet dignity. And I believe it was Bill say, humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking of yourself less. And I carried that with me.
That's a good
That's
one.
so good. It doesn't mean you're weak or meek. No, it's just you don't always think of yourself first. You think of others.
I heard another one. We were speaking back a few weeks ago at the show, and I think it was the definition of meekness. They say the meek will inherit the world. Well, you think on that, the word meekness, it's like timid or whatever like that. And I saw a definition on that word one time that said essentially meekness is humility cloaked in strength cloaked in humility.
Wow. That's very good. Yeah.
And
true. And when I would learn from these guys, when they would tell me a principle or so, they never, these men, especially Bill Pearl, and everyone went to Bill, and they learned from Bill. But when Bill, at one point I asked Bill about Bill, I've always had trouble with arm size of building my arms. I said, Bill, what would you recommend? He goes, well, Bill, I like alternate dumbbell curls. That always worked well for me. That's it. He never pontificated. He was never demonstrative. You have to do this or you have to do that, because Bill is also wise enough. Not everything works for everybody. Yeah. But he gave me what worked well for him and made a suggestion. And there's the truth if you're listening. There's the gold if you want to take it, if you're listening. If not, but Bill, when people that really know, really smart people, they're at ease with the truth. It just naturally comes from them because they're sure. It's the guy who's not sure. He's going to lobby it and push it on you and his way. But really intelligent people, they don't move a lot, and they're not real demonstrative because they're very sure.
Well, I like that quiet strength that Bill exhibited. For him to get pushed to the edge where he had to make a decision, and his coach came up to Oregon and said, "Hey, listen, it's getting, he's essentially calling you a coward." And even he had his limits, but for all intent and purposes, Bill was like, let them say what they're going to say.
Yeah.
It
He
doesn't,
knew who he was.
It doesn't move me.
Right. He knew who he was.
That's true strength. I mean, that is.
Yes. And you and I love quotes, and another one I had heard.
Billisms.
Yeah. If you're worried about what other people think of you, you will always be their prisoner.
Boy, you are not kidding. You are not kidding.
So you have to be comfortable with yourself. You got to be able to look in the mirror and be happy with that guy.
Yeah. I like this quote that you have in chapter 2 about, and it was on Caro Whitfield, the infamous coach that was down there that signed your mom up, that you went all righteously indignant to get your mom's money back. But the chapter is on him, but you have a quote by Dave Draper, and Dave states that there are no secrets. You simply have genetics, body chemistry, and bone structure. And provided the attributes of discipline and determination, you apply yourself full bore and your body potential emerges slow and sure. In other words, when Bill offered his advice, as it were, but really we were saying worked for himself, you have to find what works for you. You have to be comfortable in your own skin. You have to exploit that. And it's really, I heard another quote speaking of, right? It's called success is an inside job. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come from outside. It's got to come from, within.
And Dave said, I have several quotes from Dave in the book, because Dave is a brilliant writer. Yeah. And I would encourage all of you to get one of the best books on training or life philosophy too. That's the best, Brother Iron, Sister Steel by Dave Draper. He can really write. And when you meet him, he's almost shy. He's kind of quiet, which is a little unnerving because I'm with the great Dave Draper, but he's like your neighbor. He's very kind.
The blonde bomber.
The blonde bomber. But as Dave said, the learning is in the doing. The learning is in the doing.
Get the feedback, right? Yeah. Quick
story with Dave. When I first saw him, I went to one of his online bashes. He had a discussion group, and I contributed occasionally. And the first one was in St. Pete. I didn't get to know him well in St. Pete. I got to know him much better in Santa Cruz when he had the second one. But we had this group workout the night before the seminar at this family fitness gym in St. Pete. And I come into the entrance there, and there he is. There's the man. There's Dave Draper. And apparently my jaw was slack, and I was probably drooling. And I'm staring at him. I didn't realize I was staring at him, but I was staring at him. And he was talking to people. So he glanced over at me and raised his eyebrows and nodded his head. And yeah, it's me. I'm him. And I'm still, slack-jawed, and he glanced at me again, and he did the same thing. And like, you're staring at me. Okay, I'll be right with you. But right now you're staring at me. Okay. And as soon as I know these people, I'll get with you. And he did. And he was marvelous. He was so kind but unassuming, very, quiet, but very, very nice. But his writing is terrific. Great.
Well, it's great too when you meet, a hero, because rare is it that you do meet your heroes, and that phrase that says, "Be careful when you meet your heroes." They might let you down.
Right.
And when they don't, like these individuals you're speaking of, it's so refreshing.
It is, boy, when they're kind like that, and just Bill Pearl, when my friend and I finally met him in Orlando. If he comes through the door and we run up to him like children, and I start peppering him, and right away I start lauding him, and like true humble men, they're uncomfortable when you talk about their victories. He didn't like it. He quickly took the emphasis off. So, well, you guys look great. How long have you been training? And he wants to know about
flip the script.
Yes. And I'm peppering him with all these questions, and I realized it. And I said, "Oh, Bill, I'm sorry. You probably have things to do." I'll never forget this, Bobby. You probably have things to do, or what? He put his hands up like this. He goes, "No, fellas. The most important thing I'm doing right now is talking to you guys. Go right ahead."
What a quality!
Are you kidding? I walked away 10 inches off the ground, and when we left, he called us by name. Remembers our name.
Well, you've obviously gleaned much of that behavior because you exhibit it yourself, Bill, and that's what's so cool. You didn't know me from Adam, and when I met you, you stopped in your tracks and you were chatting with me, and then later I think I met you as you were you were checking out of the hotel. You had your clothes over your shoulder for the evening show, and I was like, "Where are you going?" You're like, "I'm gonna put these in the car," and you just stopped, and we had an opportunity to chat. And I think at the end of the day, whatever the sport, whatever the genre, whatever the business, it's how we treat one another. Again, I am guilty of, I'll leave with every good intention my house in the morning on my way to work, and I won't get 2 miles down the road and I'm biting the steering wheel and I'm like, move over, you jerk, and so it's like, where did my good spirit go? But if you can, if it can outweigh, the kindness can outweigh the human flesh jerkiness, I think you're way ahead of the game, and you do exhibit that, like I said.
Yeah, well, you and I have had some just marvelous encounters, and it's funny. I know, Bobby, when you and I met, that was not by chance. Something compelled me. We had that introduction, and I could have, because the judges invited me to go have lunch with them, and that was my intention. But I saw you sitting back out there, and you impressed me. There was something immediately I liked about you, and that was that familiarity I had with you, and just a short discussion. I said, you know what? Right now, this is a lot more important. I know those judges. I know them. I want to interact with this man because I like him. He's got a lot to offer. And that meeting you and I had enriched me that afternoon. We talked for about 2 hours.
Yeah, back at you, by the way.
And we have formed a friendship from that. Yeah, and I told my wife about you. I said, this guy is just a cool moose. He's really great.
I appreciate it. Well, there you go. You're flattering me. But, well, folks, I'll tell you what, we've learned quite a bit today. I hope you found this conversation intriguing. I know I certainly did. I love the visit here with Bill Neylon. He owns the Fitness Edge over in West Palm Beach. If you're ever on the east coast of Florida, South Florida, be sure to pop in, get a workout, get over, meet Bill, shake his hand. He'll give you the tour facility and maybe give you a tip or 10 as to how you can improve your physique and get to where you want to go goal-wise. He's a visionary. Check out his book. Once again, he's got 2 books. The first one that he's authored here is called My Journey with the Iron. And you can find that over on Amazon. Bill was kind enough to sign this copy for me. Like I mentioned, I've read it I ate it up. It's fantastic. and it goes in depth with even more of these stories. He's met Frank Zane and countless others. And then there's a training book that followed that up. Bill, what's the name of that?
It's called Your Journey, Training Log.
Okay, so
because I looked, I have it here. I looked, and I've always logged my workouts. Same cover, but it's called Your Journey. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I said, I can come up with something better than that. And there's a bonus in there because I've got posing tips, contest preparation, how to log your workouts in a very simple way that fits right in your gym bag. And it really can become a chronicle of your life. I can show you when my life was going well. I can show you overcoming injuries, when I had a real good strength run in 2014. And it really is a chronicle of your life and how things are going for you. But it's a great learning tool. When you look back and say, that diet worked really well for me, I'm going to revert back to that. My training with Chris Dickerson, how he prepared me for the 2008 Master State Championship. I've got those records. I've got what I did with him. And it can become a gold mine, but it's also really a running chronicle of your life.
Like a journal, a diary, and it's wonderful.
Otherwise, you're kind of training by the seat of your pants. Yeah, I need to see what I did last time and what I did.
How are you going to measure the progress? So that sets the standards. Those 2 books authored by Bill, and the cover was designed by his partner in crime, Shakira Shim. And be sure to look into that, get a copy. You can find him over on the Instagram platform, once again, at Bill Neylon1. Look him up, give him a follow. He'll be more than happy to connect with you and help connect the dots and inquire with whoever you want. He's always available. That's just the kind of guy he is. Bill, it's been a wonderful, quick hour that has transpired. Maybe we'll get together, do another episode down the line, not before too long. But I appreciate your
Bobby.
time. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, there you go, folks, for the wonderful Bill Neylon. My name is Bobby Stein, and we thank you for tuning in to the Motivated Mindset Podcast. And until next time, folks, please take good care.
You've been listening to another episode of the Motivated Mindset Podcast with your host, Bobby Stein. Thank you for tuning in.